All right, gentlemen, eight agents. We'll run them down here. This year is very heavy on the relief pitcher market. The first domino to fall was Joel Cuniel to San Francisco. 4 years, 79.7 million across those 4 years. The last year is a player option of that deal. I think this year we're seeing an overpay of the relief pitching.
Makes me feel better about my two relievers that are making 13 and 15 mil if these guys are making more than that.
Yeah. I get it, and I don't. I think that San Francisco has the money right now, and they're clearly pushing all their chips onto the table. At the same time, it's just a lot of money.
It is a lot of money, and he's not the only reliever they've given a lot of money to. I mean, they are going all in on their bullpen upgrades, spending a ton there, while their rotation is has guys that are on the young end, and so they're pre-arb or in low stages there.
That rotation was already one of the scariest top 3 in baseball. And now I feel like even though they have spent a lot of money, don't get me wrong, they have overpaid for some of these guys. I think San Francisco, 3 out of 5 games, if they were playing a 5-game series, let's say, 3 out of those 5 games, you're losing. Because you can get 6 to 8 innings out of your starters in those 3 games, and then he can pick any one of his bullpen arms to come into the game and close it out.
Yeah.
I think he gives him a lot of flexibility in his bullpen. He doesn't have to rely on, because like last year, it was basically Frere. I see why he made the moves. I tend to not value relief pitchers that much. They tend to be very interchangeable, with very few exceptions. And I'll be curious to see how these guys play out for him.
So what he's done is he's identified what on his team were his weak points because he made the playoffs last year. He wants to improve. He wants to get better. He lost in the wild card. No, he didn't. Remind me, did he lose in the wild? No, he beat the Dodgers.
No, he won the wild card.
Yeah,
he won the wild card, lost in the divisional.
Padres in the next round.
Padres.
He wants to get past all that. Plus, the NL West just got even tougher with the realignment. So he's going out there saying, okay, where are my weak spots? And he's addressing them. He is traded for Kirilloff to shore up his corner outfield and improve his offense. And he's addressing his bullpen, which he felt was a weaker standpoint, especially when you compare it to his starting pitching. So kudos to him for going out and making the moves necessary to improve his weak spots. We can question whether or not he spent too much money or he gave up too many prospects, as we'll talk about a trade that he made later. But he's going out and attacking what he felt like are his weak points.
And I love that.
Yeah, he is. It's just like for me, I just continue to worry about the precedent some of these signings set. I mean, like if you look at Julian Fernandez, I mean, he's given him just about as much money as he's given Cunell.
Yeah, we can move on to that one. 3 years, $46.8 million.
He's making as much as Leclerc is for me, who was 2 years ago the reliever of the year.
Yeah, I mean, he has to hope that he's getting the Texas version of Julian Fernandez, and not the
Baltimore version. Well, even though the Texas version as recently as 2024 was a disaster as well.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's even that version. To me, that's still a lot of money for essentially a setup guy at best.
It's a lot of money for a gamble.
Yeah, I mean, and at the same time, if that's where the weakness is, and there's folks out there in the market, I can see the overpay. You don't get any extra wins for how much money you've got left in your coffers at the end. But
I mean, that's true.
Yeah,
if you're in San Francisco,
it's a lot of eggs in one basket.
You have to dish the money, though. And
yeah, but I'm just saying I'm not crazy about Julian Fernandez.
Oh, I'm not either. I think if you would have got Julian Fernandez at, let's say,
back up
$10 million a year.
I was thinking around 10. That's more of a palatable
around the 10, but anywhere between $8 and $12 million. I would have said, okay, I can see the risk, but there's some upside here if he pitches like he did in Texas. But paying him what? That's like $15.6 million a year.
Yep.
You can't explain to me why that's a smart move. There's,
Well, and
I don't see the brain
least right
behind this
now.
move.
right. But I'm
Believers,
thinking also, back when Andrew James first went on the market, the West teams were basically out of play. And if he wanted to make a move for a bullpen, these were the guys that were basically available to him.
That's
I
fair.
wonder if it had started off with James available to everybody like it ended up being. I kind of think the Giants would have been in the lead. I mean, they probably would have ended up with him.
I
I
don't think they
know
would
about
have
that.
offered as much as the Phillies did.
Oh,
Let's
well,
talk
that's
about
true.
that,
Yeah, the
Aiden.
Phillies did
Well,
spend a lot of money. Yeah.
Let's move on to this because
We'll get to that.
And no matter what, they got 2 pitchers for just a little bit more than Philly paid to get 1.
That's true.
So let's talk about Andrew James. This is according to sources, has not been confirmed by eMLB Sportsnet yet. However, we do have, according to some sources who are close to the organization as well as close to the player, Andrew James has signed a deal in Philadelphia for 7 years of $209.5 million. The 7th year of that contract is a player option. I'm not going to say overpay, but I am going to say overpay because this is a massive overpay for someone who has been mediocre at best.
That's the Buster Bluth contract. Like, that's almost the same amount of money as Buster Bluth, an all-world third baseman, for a reliever, a closer, mind you, who's been good but really inconsistent in his career.
Now, to be fair, a lot of those inconsistent years were when he was in Colorado, the premier hitters park across Major League Baseball. So he did pitch much better when he went to Pittsburgh and the Dodgers. However, that does not justify paying a closer ace money. And that's all I'm going to say.
It has been reported, according to sources, again, we'll use according to sources, that GM over there, Mr. Hebrew Hammer, has reportedly said he had money to burn. Why not?
Okay.
Look, I get you have money to burn, but at some point, when do you have to be smart and think about the longevity of your organization?
That's what I was about to say. I could say, like, offer the extreme amount of money over a short term, like 3 years, but this is 7 years that we're talking about making money that goes to the best starting pitchers in this league.
He absolutely
I also
okay with his long-term prospects. Most of the core, especially on the pitching side, are on league minimum still, and they're not going to get ramped up until James at the end of his deal. He has the biggest budget in the league. That budget is only going to continue to rise. I don't think it matters. I think like this is one of only a handful of situations where it does not matter how much money he threw at him. It just doesn't matter.
But can we also say too, for a sense of it, I get it doesn't matter how much money he threw out in theory, but at the same time, can we talk about too? This was our first CCP that was given this free agent target. We have a second one going on right now in Justin Barber, a first baseman formerly of the Yankees organization. However, out of those 2 CCPs, yes, James has had more production, but he's also not a true CCP. He gets 1 OST each year. It's not like I can sit here and say, let's say Justin Barber's creator, decides to come into streaming, gift 20 boosts. I know I'm going to get 20 boosts right away out of that player. But with Andrew James, he gets 1 OST a year. And then outside of that, it's natural game progression. So he's not a true CCP. Like you mentioned, he's getting paid ace money. If he was a starting pitcher with this kind of production, then we could be having this conversation. But he's not. He is a closer who can give you 1 to 2 innings, who is not going to give you that production. And it's not even like he can be boosted throughout the season or throughout his career when he starts to hit his decline.
He has the ability to be one of the best closers in the league. That is undeniable. But you have to look at the value that you're going to get back from a relief pitcher as opposed to a starting pitcher.
Well, and for any closer, a 7-year deal, there's going to be at least 2, possibly 3 years that are going to be average to substandard. So, going into that sort of thing, knowing that a couple of years are going to suck for that kind of money, I'd be hard pressed to pull the trigger on that myself.
Yeah, I just,
I
for
mean-
me, it's just 7 years, $200 million. It's just wow.
And
It
we forgot to
defies
mention
reason.
too. A full no trade clause. So if he starts to suck, Hebrew can't even get out of it without DFAing him.
which no one's going to take anyway. So
Nope. I said here, I don't mind it because the Phillies have so much money it doesn't matter. But I do not like the precedent this is going to set.
Exactly. That's
I
the
feel
thing
like
I hate the
that
most.
the next big CCP, like the commissioner's obviously going to test this with his CCPs first. Knight has a player option at the end of this year. I think I worry that Rachel Luba, the agent for Andrew James, is going to try and get in on the negotiations for Ethan Knight as well and try to extort a $50 million deal out of somebody. That's what my worry is after seeing this.
Well, I don't even worry limiting it to CCPs though. I mean, I in the game engine.
I think reason because Andrew James got $209 million, it drove up the prices of Julian Fernandez, of Cuniel, of the other reliever that Philly signed him, Brandon Woodruff, who's like a hybrid starter reliever. He got 4 years, $42 million. He's not worth 4
before
years.
the Andrew James deal even went through. That has no impact on it.
he's also a starter. He's not going to be a reliever.
Well, it still drives up the price of these other players. I mean, let's move on to talking about Woodruff a little bit here. Woodruff, he's been okay. He spent time in both Minnesota and Baltimore last year. He
shouldn't have been.
Look at that FIP. I mean, in Minnesota, his FIP was 5.3, 4.63, and then in Baltimore, a 6.34. I mean, his last best season was probably in Toronto, where he gave up the most home runs of his career.
So I think this is for the places that Woodruff could go specifically. I think Philadelphia was one of the best places he could go because we know that Hebrew is building his team exclusively around ground ball pitching, and he's built the defense on the infield behind him to support that. It's also one of the reasons why he pushed so hard for Andrew James, because he's also a ground ball pitcher. With Woodruff, no offense to Brendan's O's, they weren't the best at infield defense, and that might have contributed to the FIP. Phillies have one of the best infield defenses in the league, and it fits the profile of Woodruff as a pitch to contact pitcher, get those ground balls.
When righties pulled and lefties pushed, the defense was fine. There was just a big old Shervin Newton sized hole at second base. Shervin Newton, by the way, winner of the worst defender in eMLB last year by zone rating.
Yeah.
Congratulations, Shervin.
Anybody but Madrano is trending right now.
And apparently not anybody but Madrano.
Yeah.
Let's
hope the curse of second base in Baltimore doesn't affect Nick Spence, because I feel like that's where you're going to move Spence now that you got what's his name, Nunez over there at short.
The thing you have to remember that worries me here too, though, is that again, this is a 4-year deal for a guy who's going to be starting his age 34 season. So you got this.
However, it is backloaded. It is backloaded.
Front loaded.
Or front loaded. Sorry.
Yeah, but again, he's aging. This last season, both his walk rate went up, his K rate went down. I mean, that absolutely could be the start of a dangerous trend there.
Because originally Woodruff was looking for 6 years.
None of us were
6 years, somewhere around $9 million. and like myself, because I was in on that for a little bit, and then realized that I was not going to win that one. So, but it was no way I could see going for more than 3 or 4. And I think he's kind of at the max for that. But it's kind of like the James thing. He's kind of hoping he can get a couple of good years out of it before he starts flaming out, I think, at the age. Because he's trending down. It's just a matter of time.
I want to talk about a starter who I think was completely overpaid. Let's move on to the Forrest Whitley to Atlanta deal.
Starter.
Yikes. Yikes. I mean, 2024, yes, he had a very good season in 2024. Since then, it's not been overly amazing, and he's not going to give you many innings. I mean, we saw in the playoffs that Ben moved him to the bullpen, and he was quite efficient in that bullpen role. I mean, the last game he pitched against Chicago, not great, but outside of that was pretty dang good. You know, the other series that they used him out of the bullpen, but he's got 5 pitches, 4 of them plus. I mean, that changeup is nasty, but I know Atlanta is struggling for pitching, but you've already got that high contract to Soroka. Now you have this Forrest Whitley contract on top of that.
Let's take a look at that.
Yikes.
Yeah.
Yikes
And
is all
that
I have to
bullpen
say.
is really going to, yeah, the bullpen's going to have a hard time because they're also got Troy Bacon in right now as a starter, who's got a stamina of 8. So you've got 2 guys who are on low pitch counts to start with. So you're really looking for those other 3 guys to pull a lot of innings. Otherwise, you're going to have a huge bullpen to cover for.
Because John Duplantier hasn't really worked out there. I mean, that's why they're going to try to add people here.
I see a potential for this team using a lot of the opener follower strategy. With these guys that we were just mentioning, like Whitley, eating up those middle innings after another reliever comes in to start. And it could potentially work. That may be what they're going for. But I agree. You're going to have depth all across the staff in order to cover innings.
What relievers are you going to use? This bullpen is absolutely shattered this offseason. This bullpen has lost so much. I mean, you got Connor Thomas, Juan Romero, Ramon Linares, but how many of these guys are actually gonna show up for you? I mean, you know, they all are coming off rough years. It's, you know, you lost Corbin Klaus, you lost Gabriel Rodriguez. I mean, there are so many guys that this team has lost that at this point I just sit here and scratch my head like, what is this team gonna do?
I think now I am not in Kenny's head, and I doubt this is what Kenny's thinking. But if I can get a little radical here, if I were the GM of the Braves and I was inheriting this roster, I would lean hard into the bullpen only strategy. You don't have starting pitchers. You just have guys who you throw out there to eat innings. You have a couple long relievers. You open every game with you have a couple guys who are set to open every single game, and you just let the entire staff cycle through for every game, calling in whatever pitcher works for the situation.
Yeah,
Was that a slight shot?
I'm sorry?
Is that a slight shot at me, Brennan?
No.
Okay. Just making sure over there.
I have no idea how that even would be a shot at you, but all right.
Yeah, I mean,
Because
they have
the way you
have-
inherited this roster.
Moving on.
Why do you think it's a shot, Aiden?
I think he's just defensive because he knows he messed up in Atlanta.
Because I messed up in Atlanta. I have been adamant about that
Okay.
since I started recording these podcasts. I messed up in Atlanta. It was not exactly my best move. I learned a lot, and I think I am. We'll get into that another time.
I hear the strategy that Brenden is talking about, and the first thing I thought of is how sustainable is that?
I don't know.
You know, and yeah, I mean it's a cool experiment, but
It might be where they just do like a instead of opener follower, they do a full bullpen day every 5th or 4th and 5th. I don't know.
That's
have like a 3 starter rotation and then do 2 bullpen days in between. Something like that.
That's the real life Tampa Bay Rays. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what they've done the
Right.
past 2 years, basically. You know, and then they found people out of that. It's a strategy. I know in real life it seemed to have worked, but will it work in OOTP is a completely different story.
And I'm by no means saying that that's like I don't know if that'll work or not, but with the way the roster is constructed, I struggle to think a conventional setup is going to work.
Yeah, because if you look,
totally.
their relievers, they have a lot of high stamina relievers. I mean, a lot of those guys who, you know, even guys that are returning that were quality relievers for them last year are high stamina guys.
Yeah, for sure. All right, let's move on to the last pitcher we have to talk about that signed, Jordan Hicks, heading to the Dodgers, 4 years, $70 million. Um, Going back to the NL West where he spent time with San Diego. Um, Pretty standard contract, same money across the whole year. Um, Again, a little bit on the higher side, but I like the Hicks deal because he's younger by 1 year. I feel like he's had a little more. But how do we feel about this deal? And then how do we feel about this deal versus the deal that a very similar closer and Cunel got? Comparison.
It's like you said, it's very similar to the Cunil deal, and I'm gonna give the similar evaluation. Maybe a little bit more than what maybe you wanted to spend, but maybe that was a part of competition between teams from the NL West. Maybe multiple teams were in on this, and Dodgers had to up the ante a little bit to make sure they got Hicks to sign.
I think when you're
Probably
Dodgers,
what's happened with the San Fran.
it's like the Phillies, just throw the money. Who cares?
Yeah, but this isn't like egregious though.
No,
Like you can at least argue that Hicks could be worth $17.5 million.
Yeah,
It is on the high side, but it's not like It's not like, oh my goodness, why in the world did you spend this much money on Hicks? It's, oh, that's a little bit high. Maybe I wouldn't have done that, but I can see why the Dodgers did it.
of course.
No, I can.
Yeah.
I can as well. And as an extreme ground ball pitcher with the defense he has behind him, it makes a lot of sense to go to LA. Like, if he would have gone to LA, if he would have gone to Philadelphia, I don't think anyone really bats an eye because he's an extreme ground ball pitcher, and those two infields are very, very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you look, I mean, his FIP was up a little bit this year, but a lot of his other peripherals held up really well, and have still looked fine. From his transition from San Diego to the Reds for a little bit, and then later in the year to Seattle. So he still has plenty of gas left in the tank.
I mean, his walk percentage went up a little bit, strikeout percentage down a little bit with Seattle specifically, but in Cincinnati, he had the strikeout number up, yes, walk number up a little bit, but played to a 1 WAR, which WAR isn't perfect, but I think we saw why he gets the money he is, and I think he can continue to bounce back to that 2025 and 2024 form as well as part of the form in Cincinnati. All
And
right,
this is
let's
not
talk
a
about.
team that's looking for. They're not counting on their pitching to make them successful. So he's not coming in a 3-2 game.
I mean, he is though. He's their closer. He got the promised role
Yeah.
of closer, and you look at this staff. They don't really have much when it comes to the bullpen. The rotation, they're 1 through 3. They're 1 and 2 are very good. 3, depending if you pitch Wander or Rodriguez, both of them are sort of mid tier, and then Julio Urias is not really a great 5th starter. So
Right.
this
I'd
bullpen might take a
argue that
little more
Wander
work.
is definite. Wander is just young and developing. He is not a mid-tier guy.
Yeah. But whereas Philly struggles to score runs, that's not the Dodgers' problem. So
No.
this is not
I mean, that
somebody who's
lineup.
going to have to pitch 2 innings to get a save.
They don't struggle to
you know.
score runs if they can keep hitting home runs. If they stop hitting home runs, they're going to struggle to score.
I think with the addition, as we saw coming on late with Rob Deere, how I feel like, yes, that shows there, but you see the late addition of Rob Deere, LaRon Smith smacks doubles. D-Mac McKenzie had a great year and got on base at a great clip. You added Byron Buxton as well, who's not necessarily a home run or nothing guy. I think that,
Whoa.
Louis Ramos.
I lied.
Too.
That is exactly what Byron Buxton is.
Buxton is. I lied.
He's just
I
a
was
lot
looking
better
at the wrong-
defender than they had before.
I think as well that you look at this team and Chris has definitely balanced out his lineup where it's less home runner. It's still pretty home run or nothing heavy, but he balanced out this lineup a little bit. My question is going to be, will the pitching staff be able to give you a full season? And if I know anything about Chris, it's that he's not done and he's going to pull some rabbit out of another hat and get another starter or another reliever or something, but he's going to pull a rabbit out of his hat somewhere.
Seabold is still on the market.
Seabold is still on the market.
We'll talk about him in a few minutes here. Let's move over to the 2 position players. Let's start with probably the more surprising one, Alex Verdugo. to Miami after not playing much. He's staying in the NL East. Miami's going to look to resurrect his career in the NL East. 5 years, $65 million for a guy coming off of a really bad injury. Surprising deal. However, he fits into Miami's philosophy of putting butts in seats.
Have you ever seen an MVP collapse so hard?
I don't think so.
I don't
Maybe
think
Cody
so.
Bellinger.
Yeah, Cody Bellinger in real life.
Yeah.
Well,
However,
and he got hurt, so I mean, that's
yeah,
a
but
Yeah,
he
lot
was
of
did
it.
playing
get hurt.
horribly
He was
before
awful
he got
before he got
hurt.
hurt.
Yeah. And it wasn't it's not like it was like 2 weeks and then he was out for the season. It was, how many games did he play?
50
Yeah,
games.
52. That's like
Yeah.
a fourth of a season, and he was atrocious. However, that being said, I think this is a pretty darn good deal for Miami. You get a former MVP on a lot less than he would have made if he had actually had an average season, to add to a lineup that already has a really good young core up the middle with Red Dit and Lido. And you sign him to a bunch of years, he might be that veteran leadership that helped. Well, not leadership, never mind. His personality is low leader. But
He could put forth more effort.
correct. But a really good defender in left field, has a chance to bounce back. I think it's a reasonable contract. I don't hate the deal at all.
No, for Miami, who really has no long-term commitments, and they're starting to they want to add players who A, have upside, B, put butts in seats. I don't mind it.
And I mean,
It's-
5 years from now, if they've got to eat $13 million, that's not that big a deal.
And if Verdugo bounces back to MVP form, you've got a trade piece.
Yeah. Because again, even if he just bounces back close to that, that it's a bargain of a deal that somebody would come after if you really felt like, you wanted to cash him in for prospects.
If he bounces back and EVC keeps growing and dip keeps on, it might not be anywhere for him to go. He might be just fine in Miami.
I feel like Verdugo is at best an MVP, at worst 6.3, 4.1, 3.7, 4.8. Like, that is who Alex Verdugo is, or at least was prior to this season in Atlanta. The ratings
still
tanked
really
hard.
good value.
I think that he can rebound.
It's a 4-WAR. He's roughly a 4-WAR player. His average. He's roughly a 4-WAR player with a ceiling of MVP. And you know what, too? With that 4-WAR that he's roughly guesstimated to have, if we equate it to it's about $8 to $9 million, Eddie paid for a WAR and a quarter, a WAR and a half.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
Well,
definitely got him at half off at least.
Yeah, I mean, even if you look at his career, his floor is about a 2-WAR player. So
even at a 2-WAR, he still got half a WAR free.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I mean, he has a floor that's still pretty palatable, even if that's really all you get.
Yeah.
And
Let's
the worst
talk
season
about
he had since he became a regular starter was 3.7. Like, this is 2.5 season until this year.
Let's go ahead and talk about
potential bounce back player of the year candidate.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure. Let's talk about the other position player that was signed. This one to Andrew, the real life Carlos Correa special deal. Trey Turner heading to St. Louis. He's gonna play second base with the injury to Royce Lewis.
Yep.
Now, Andrew, we want to hear your strategy behind this, because once Royce Lewis comes back, what do you do with Trey Turner, and what do you do with your infield now that seems to have now many, many good players in it?
It all depends on how players are performing at the time that Royce Lewis comes back, because Royce Lewis is my MVP candidate. He's going to slot right back into the lineup. But what it gives me is the flexibility to say, okay, do I want to focus on offense or do I want to focus on defense? Because Turner is the offense, Tony Sawyer is the defense. So my options are either Lewis plays short while Turner plays second, or keep Sawyer at short and keep Lewis at second. So it gives me a lot more flexibility in my lineup to be able to construct it to where I feel like I can get the best benefit out of my team.
Or if
Brenden,
Shuey's not performing very well, you can play Turner at third and keep Sawyer at short and Royce Lewis at second.
Well, at that point,
Brennan,
I'd
can
be
you-
putting Benny at third. But
That's
still.
true. I'm just saying you have a lot of options.
No.
Correct.
Brennan, can you
correct.
pull
I
up
have lot of
a
options.
defensive comparison between Trey Turner and Royce Lewis for me?
Cool. I actually don't know how to do comparisons on this time.
Well, yeah, you can do compare, but you have to go to Lewis first.
Oh, really?
To do recently
Yeah.
visited, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if you go to Lewis next, then when you do the compare, it'll pop up the two guys.
I'm sorry for making this so much work. I just wanted to look at something.
Oh, no, you're good. I just don't typically do these, so.
All right.
And then go to defensive ratings, please.
Boom.
So I look at this here, and you look at this. I understand why you're keeping Sawyer at shortstop, but
Yep.
honestly, if you needed to, I feel like depending on how good of a season Sawyer's having, you could look to, trade either Sawyer or Turner and then play the other one, because I think you can move Lewis over to short without an issue in the world with that 15 range. For me, at least 12 range at shortstop with Trey Turner would not exactly be ideal.
Right, and that's why what the goal would be, if Sawyer were to be the option off the bench, Lewis would play short and Turner would play second, because Lewis was a shortstop in Minnesota before I traded for him. I moved him to second because I had the defensive dynamo in Sawyer. If I didn't have Sawyer, he would have definitely played shortstop. He's definitely, I would say he's an above average shortstop defensively, so I could easily put him in there. He just won't be the Gold Glove caliber performance that Sawyer would be. So it's
And then
just
you
a
can-
question of if I choose offense over defense at the point where Lewis comes back.
So now the contract negotiations wrapped up on stream. I'll just put it that way.
Yes.
What was going through your head, and how fast were you paddling at that point when everything was going down?
Well, my first thought was, crap, I completely messed this up and I must have misread something, because you can ask Brenden. I was like asking him like, hey, where are the contract details in the Discord? I need to make sure I'm doing this right. And I thought I had read everything well. It turns out I did read everything correctly, because it focused specifically on we cannot offer more than one team or vesting option if it's under 5 years, because that takes control away from the player. Whereas options were always considered to be, you can do whatever with those, because that puts the control in the player's hand instead of yours. So when it first happened, I was like, oh crap, now everyone knows I'm going after Trey Turner. And it just tipped my hand, because at that point I was actually fortunate that it didn't show up that like the players interested on the offseason screen. It still kept only showing Washington. So I was like, okay, no one knows I'm doing this right now except maybe Washington. And I was like, okay, I want to sneak in here and get this, because if this contract had gone up anymore, I probably would have pulled myself out of it, because I wasn't looking for someone to lock up long term. I was looking for a stopgap player, specifically because Lewis isn't going to be back until May or June of this season. This gives me a lot more confidence in my lineup at second base. The original, if I didn't get Turner, my plan was to try to train Tom Shuey at second, who does not have range or turn double play at all, and that would have been a bigger hit to my defensive abilities.
So Andrew, did Turner have a qualifying offer on him?
Yes, he did. So I did lose a third-round pick, but as a lot of GMs around the league can attest to, I was looking to trade for a shortstop or second base all offseason, and I kept running in. Well, I just didn't have – either I didn't have what they wanted, or I wasn't willing to give up what they asked for. And we'll talk about one of those trades for a second baseman. I was asking about that second baseman, and I did not offer what they did. So it just makes sense. So – I forgot where I was going with that, but essentially,
Andrew, the comical low baller.
I was not lowballing. I just don't have. I only have two top 100 prospects. One of them is Shuey, who is already in the majors, and another is Roediger, who I'm not giving up. So
Top
I don't really have a
100
lot of
prospects are the biggest scam in OOTP.
Oh, okay. I'm just giving
You
a
heard it here
generalization of the quality of my system.
I just thought after all of that was over with on stream, all I could picture was we've all seen the Trey Turner slide that ends up with him
the
just popping
smooth
up and
slide.
walking
Yep.
out. That was Andrew walking out of that whole situation.
The funny thing was,
Here's
go ahead.
No, go.
I was gonna say when all this was going down, I was on my phone because I was making my daughter dinner. I was getting her ready for bed, and I was like, "Oh crap, I gotta fix this right now because I'm in trouble." Fortunately, Brenden was there to help me out to say, "Hey, I know where the rule is. Let's make sure we get this right." And I was like, "Oh crap, I gotta focus on my family first." But I also I'm potentially breaking the rules here. I need to make sure that everything is good.
Andrew's
So,
wife comes
yeah.
in and is like, "Did you give our child an entire cake? What are you doing?"
Hey, it has
Oh,
eggs.
Lord.
It's protein.
Protein.
Andrew's Logic.
Nice.
Welcome to Andrew's Logic, a new segment on the crossover episodes.
I'm okay with that.
I'm great with it. I mean, Brendan, as we mentioned, it can't be worse than your dinner tonight.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, we don't need to
Ice
talk
cream
about that.
sandwich,
No.
chips and salsa, and coffee. What more do you need?
Chips and
Dr.
salsa
Pepper.
were like 3 chips. All right. It was the
Okay.
test to make sure the salsa was
You know what that
Okay,
sounds like? That
where's
sounds
this
like
going?
the college kid. That sounds
I don't
like
know
the
where this
college
is
kid
going. I
talk.
think he just wants to bully me. Let's move on.